Philippians 4. We left off last week in verse 9. Let's pick up the story in verse 10. Here we go. Paul goes on to say, I rejoiced greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be what? Content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Have you ever been in a rough spot in life? Down on your luck, out of work, not enough money to pay the bills, sick in the hospital, and somebody, a friend or a family member or a stranger, somebody was there for you in that moment. Groceries on your doorstep, a place to stay, a note of encouragement, a visit to the hospital for prayer. How do you repay people for generosity like that? This last year, my wife and I adopted a beautiful girl from Uganda. And a few months ago, at the tail end of the adoption process, we got the call from the agency last minute, hey, it's time to go over and pick her up with 4 weeks notice, right? Now, tickets to Africa by the time you get to the travel agent and all that, 2 weeks notice are not cheap. And at the last minute, there were all sorts of unexpected expenses, and we were short of cash, and I was stressed out. Out of the blue, I got a call from a family friend who said, hey, how are you? Congrats. By the way, don't worry about the cost. Your tickets are covered. Oh, and your hotel. Covered. How do you repay people like that? Well, for starters, by saying what? Thank you. And that is what's going on at the end of Philippians. You know the story. Paul was in prison, we think in Rome, as an enemy of the state for preaching the gospel, or the euangelion, that Jesus is Lord, not Caesar. All right, he's a traitor to the empire. And the way the Roman prison system works, you're on your own for food and drink and provisions, which means you have the mercy of family and friends. But Paul was at the heart of the empire, 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem, and he is all alone, and he's literally starving to death. When out of the blue, door blows open, and a guy by the name of Epaphroditus shows up from the city of Philippi, well over 800 miles away. It was a church Paul planted years before. Epaphroditus was a friend, and he shows up. Paul, I have gifts for you. I have money, I have food, I have water, I have clothing, I have all the provisions you need, and Paul is literally saved from death. And one of the reasons Paul is writing to the Philippians is to say thank you, right? The end of Philippians is, to be honest, a glorified thank you note, right? Let's work through the text line by line. Chapter 4, verse 10. He goes on to say, I rejoiced greatly in the Lord. Now, the word rejoice can be translated to celebrate. In fact, the sentence can be translated, I'm having a great celebration in the Lord. Where is Paul, by the way? Yeah, he's in jail. He's a prisoner. But I'm having a great celebration in the Lord. Keep in mind what Paul was just harping on, right? Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about or meditate on such things. Those are the kind of things you should fill up your mind with. Paul is calling the Philippians and you and me to celebrate the goodness of God in all creation, in the early light of a brand new day, in the colors of fall, in the company of a friend. The world is teeming with the generosity of God, and Paul is calling you and me to open up your eyes. But Paul is not a hypocrite. He's doing that. He's in prison, and he says, you know what? I'm having a great celebration in the Lord. Because, he goes on, at last you renewed your concern. Now, the word renewed is a botanical metaphor for the budding of a flower at springtime. He's saying, listen, when Epaphroditus walked through the door, it was like the end of a long, cold, dark winter in my life and the start of a brand new spring. You renewed your concern. Now, by concern, Paul means the gifts, the money, the food, the water, all of that. You renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it, right? You cared about me, but you had no opportunity. We don't know why. Maybe because Paul was 800 miles away and off the grid. Maybe because the Philippians were poor. We're not really sure. But he said, listen, you had no opportunity to show it, but you were concerned about me. And in essence, Paul is saying, thank you. I'm alive and well because of you, Epaphroditus, because of your generosity, because of your giving. I'm alive, and the gospel is not dead. In fact, the gospel is thriving right in the heart of the empire. Paul is saying thank you. But notice what Paul says next, 11. I am not saying this because I am in need. Meaning, to clarify, thank you, you saved my life, thank you for the money, but I'm not saying this because I'm in need. Wait a minute, Paul, you are in need. You're in prison. Like, you were starving to death. What do you mean you're not in need? For, he goes on, I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Meaning, I'm the kind of guy who's okay with little or nothing. I was not in prison and depressed, right? And miserable and crying tears into my journal all day long and doubting God, where are you? No, I was having a great celebration in the Lord and starving to death, but I was having a great celebration in the Lord. In fact, I was content. I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. 4:12, I know what it is to be in need, down and out, in poverty, right? Living in squalor, in prison, no freedom, my health failing, all alone. Yep, I know what that is like. And I know what it is to have plenty, more than enough, food to spare, money to spare, a roof over my head, a job, friends, family, to be a part of a thriving church. Yep, I know what that is like. I know both. And I have learned the secret of, notice the language, the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Paul says, I have learned the secret of being content. The word secret is the word moeo in Greek. Can you say moeo? Right. And it was a word used in the Eastern mystery religions in the first century, which were kind of like the ancient equivalent of Tom Cruise and Scientology, right? And in the Eastern religion, there were initiation rituals you would go through to discover the secret. And Paul is, in fact, the text can be translated, I have gone through the initiation rituals, right? I'm on the inside. I found the secret. Paul claims he found the secret to contentment. Contentment is an elusive thing, am I right? How many of you can say that? I found the secret to contentment. How many of you can say, I can't, I'm 110% content. I don't want more money. I don't want more stuff. I don't want more square feet. I don't want a better job. I don't want a better house. I don't want a better, you fill in the blank. No, not me. I am 110% content. Can you say that? Not me. Not this guy, right? Paul says, yeah, I can. I found the secret. And what blows my mind is that nothing about Paul's circumstances says he should be content. Nothing. He's not rich. Okay, he's in poverty. He's not famous. If anything, he's infamous. He's wanted by the government, right? He's not single. So he's not married. Shut up. He's not married. He's single. Scholars actually speculate he was a widower, right? He's not healthy and good looking. Think of the thorn in the flesh, right? Nothing about Paul's circumstances says he should be content. Here's a guy in prison, dirt poor, bad health, life failing, and he's having a great celebration in the Lord. He says, listen, I have learned the secret of being content. That's the kind of guy you want to learn about contentment from. Am I right? And here's a few thoughts on contentment from Paul, from the dude in prison, and from the text. First off, if you're taking notes, contentment is something you learn. Notice the language. Paul says, I have learned to be content in 11. I know in 12 what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content. Contentment is not natural. It's not the default setting for humans. I think of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? God says to the proto-humans, you may eat from any tree in the garden, minus one, and it's off to the side. Don't worry about that, but don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And which tree do Adam and Eve eat from? The one tree. In a garden full of yeses, they want the one thing they cannot have. Are we any different? In a world full of yeses and teeming with the generosity, we want the one thing we cannot have because there's always something, listen, there is always something just out of your reach. If only I was married, if only I was out of school, if only I was in a career. There's always something just out of your reach. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. My 2 boys' birthdays are 6 days apart. 2 for your money, 1 birthday party. Don't tell them that. Shh. And this week, Moses turned 4 and Jude 7. Here's a video of my munchkin, Moses, on the night before his birthday.
So Moses, today is your last night of being 3. What do you think about that?
Awesome!
Awesome?
Yeah!
So how did it feel to be 3 for a whole year?
Bad.
Bad? Why bad?
Because I don't like to be 3.
What do you want to be?
I want to be 6.
Well, that's still a couple years away. Is that because Jude is 6?
Yeah.
How about 4? What do you feel about 4?
I don't know.
I think 4 is good. And I think 3 was really good too.
I want to be like as big as Jude.
You will eventually. In fact, you may even be bigger than Jude eventually.
What do you think about being 3? Bad. What's wrong with being 3? I mean, it's heaven. Your life is about Legos, fishy crackers, and story time, right? I mean, what's bad about being 3, right? Well, I want to be 6. Why? Because Jude is 6. Notice the role, in a 3-year-old, notice the role that comparison plays in discontentment. There will always be a Jude in your life. Right? There will always be somebody older than you, or younger than you, or better looking than you, or cooler than you, or smarter than you, or more educated than you, or more intelligent than you, or more successful than you, you will never be the best. Welcome to church. Glad you're here. Right? New church growth technique right there. You suck. You'll never be the best. Turn to Jesus. No, sorry. But it's true. There will always be somebody better than you. Right? You will never be content until you put to death comparison. Because there will always be somebody or something that is just out of your reach. That is why you have to learn to be content. Right? You have to learn. And in fact, the word learned in the text is in the aorist tense in Greek, which means it was not an epiphany, not a revelatory flash of light and, oh, wow, in a moment I learned the secret, right? No, it's something Paul learned over a long period of time. Think of learning, right? Learning is hard work. How many of you are students, right? Yeah, learning is hard work, am I right? I've been in graduate school for years. It's dang hard, right? It takes time and energy and willpower and brain. It's hard work. Paul says, I worked at it, but over a long period of time, I learned the secret of being content. And the beauty of that is if Paul can learn, you can learn. You have the exact same spirit in you as Paul. If Paul can learn, I can learn. I have the exact same spirit as Paul. I can learn to be content, and so can you. Life is a laboratory. You are a student every day at the job you hate, at the school you're tired of, in the marriage that's not healthy right now. Every day is a chance to test and probe and examine and learn the secret of being content. Now, secondly, if you're taking notes, contentment is not dependent on your circumstances, right? I love what Paul says. I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances in 11, right? I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation in 12. Whether I'm single or married, whether I'm poor or employed in a job I love, whether I'm in a house I love or not, I learn the secret in any and every situation, in whatever circumstances. Now, we think the way the human psyche is wired, okay, the formula that you and I buy into is when I get X, then I'll be content. Or whatever language you like. It was contentment in the ancient Near East. Today it's happiness, right? Then I'll be happy. Then I'll be content, right? When I get out of school, then I'll be content. When I get in a job, then I'll be content. When I'm this, when I'm that, when I get more money, when I get more stuff, when I get a new car, when I get a new house, then I'll be content. Then I'll be happy. And we all know it's not true, right? If you don't, you should. It's not true. It's a myth. It's a full-on myth. Why? Because the second you get to the goalpost moves. Right? You get to the goal you've been working for a decade, for a year, for months, for weeks. You get there, and it's glorious for a half hour. And then your mind is filled with what's next, right? When you're in high school, all you're thinking is about is, gosh, I want to get out of high school and go to college. When you're in college, you think, okay, I want to get out of college and find a job. When you're in a job, you think, okay, I want to find a real job, right? When you're in a real job, you think, okay, I want a promotion. I want to become a manager. I want to become an artist. I want to become a director. I want to become it, right? And then you want to get married, and then you want to buy a house, and then you want to have kids, and then you want your kids to move out, and then you want, right? Right? And the American dream is a carrot on a stick. Seriously. It's always right there, but it's just out of your reach. I think it's one of the reasons that it's hard, Jesus said, for the rich to enter the kingdom of God, because the rich, which by the way is every single one of you if you're American, every single one of you is rich. For the rich, we think we have options. We think, yes, I can be content with Jesus, money, success, beauty, blah, blah. We think we have there are no options. There's one option, Jesus. We think it's a carrot on a string. It's always just out of your reach. Paul says, gosh, no, that is not the way to live. That's why if you're not content now, you will never be. Never. If you're not content single, will you be content married? Married couples? No. If you're not content in college, will you be content in a career? No. No, I think I'm an exception to the rule. No, you're not at all. And discontentment robs you of joy because it robs you of the ability to celebrate the goodness of God in the moment. Listen, you need to understand that contentment is not a destination, it's a mode of travel. This is not a destination like an airport or a city that you get to out on the horizon in the future. It's more like an airplane or a rental car. It's a way you move through the universe. It's a mode of travel. That's what Paul is saying. It's not dependent. Yes, some times are better than others. Duh, right? There are times of your life that are easier to be content than others. Absolutely. But as a general rule, it's not dependent. Here's a guy who's in prison. I'm having a great celebration in the Lord. It's not dependent on your circumstances. And then last, if you're taking notes, contentment is a struggle in times of want and in times of plenty. The line that stuck out to me like a sore thumb was 12. Paul says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Right? It can be translated, I have learned to be content in plenty. What? In fact, one version says, I have learned how to cope with having too much. What in the world? I've learned how to cope with having too much? Why does Paul say that? Because Paul is smart. He's an intelligent man, and he knows that the way money works, the more you have, the more you want. Am I right? Right? That is truth right there. The more you have, when it comes to money, the more you have, the more you want. I remember when we started the church, I made $800 a month, no benefits, right? And I was not content, but I was more content than I am now. Because the funny thing is, when you're dirt poor, you're not thinking about all the stuff you want, right? You don't sit around thinking about, oh gosh, if I had an iPhone 5. It's 10 months salary, gross, right? You're not thinking about, oh, I want a new car, because it's not an option. But you work your tail off, a year goes by, 3 years, 5 years, you get a raise or 2 or 3. Next thing you know, you have enough money to pay the bills, novel concept, and you have money to spare. Maybe it's a lot, maybe it's not much at all, but you have money to spare. Now all of a sudden, your mind is filled up. Oh, what if I had an iPad and an iPod and an iPhone and a MacBook and yes, all of the above. And that, iPad mini, I need the iPad mini, right? Duh, right? And okay, I need this and I need that. What if I got this? What if I got that? And your mind is filled up and you're sucked into all the stuff you do not have because the human desire for money is insatiable. What's that famous line? Rockefeller, the oil tycoon, richest man in the history of America. Somebody I read the other day put his net worth in modern terms at $200 billion. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but richest man for sure in the history of America. And he was asked the question, how much money is enough? And you know the famous line, just a little bit more. Because it's never enough, never. That's why the only one of the 10 commandments that is repeated is, anybody know? Anybody? You shall not covet. In modern writing, if you want to emphasize a point, you start or italicize it or underline it. In ancient writing, if you want to emphasize a point, you what? You repeat it. The only one of the 10 commandments that's repeated. You shall not covet, period. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or house or donkey. All of you who covet your neighbor's donkey. Urban farmers in the front, no more coveting your neighbor's donkey, all right? I mean, seriously, right? It's repeated. Why? Because God knows the way the human heart is bent, we covet. We crave, we lust, call it greed, call it whatever. We crave more. And it's never enough. In fact, money comes with its own set of problems. Am I right? Here's a few lines from the Hebrew wisdom literature that Paul was steeped in. Here's a line from Proverbs. In fact, it's a prayer. 2 things I ask of you, Lord, do not refuse me before I die. Okay, 2 prayer requests. First off, keep falsehood and lies far from me. Okay, for integrity, that makes sense. Secondly, give me neither poverty nor riches. What? But give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. How many of you have ever prayed that? I haven't. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me neither poverty. I like the first part. God, I think I can handle riches, For your glory, God, I promise. For you, for your kingdom, I mean, how many of you have ever, I've never prayed that. God, don't give me poverty and don't give me riches. Just give me enough to eat today. And not only does he pray that, but he says, if I had to narrow it down to 2 prayers, that's number 2. Here's a line from Ecclesiastes. A man, by the way, written by a man with a ton of money. The sleep of a laborer, a hardworking man or woman, is sweet. You know that feeling of a good night's rest after a long day's work? Whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. Because when you have money, when you have stuff, you worry about your money. You worry about the stock market. You worry about your stuff. You worry about we have 2 cars in my house. How insane is that? Dinky percentage of humans on the planet own 2 cars. We own 2. My wife's car is nice. It's an '07, low miles, beautiful heated seats. Oh, it's gorgeous, right? My car is a beater, right? 1975. It's stylish. It's a BMW, but it's how old is that? 75 to what is that? I'm bad at math. 37 years old, right? It's older than I am, right? It's ancient, right? And it's a piece of junk. I mean, it looks nice, right, Eric? It looks nice. But I mean, the sunroof leaks and the heater's broken and it fogs over on the inside. If you see a guy driving down the road with a towel, that's this guy, right? Now the beauty is, I absolutely love my car, but I don't care about it, right? If my kids drop or dent or scratch the hood, I don't care. It's got hundreds of dents and scratches all over it, right? I mean, if it breaks down, whatever, we'll fix it. I'm a neat freak to the core. I don't think I've washed that thing in 6 months, right? I don't care. Now, my wife's car, on the other hand, Oh, that is gorgeous. Kids, get away, get away, get away. No food in the car. Don't scratch it. You know? It's for kids. They're going to scratch the car, John Mark, right? I worry about that. Every time I get in, it's, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, there's a scratch, there's a spot, there's a stain, right? Because am I alone? You're like, you are OCD and need help. Shut up. All right? But there's something to that. As for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. You worry about your money. You worry about your stuff. It's not all it's cracked up to be. There's something to be said for having enough to eat and to drink and to celebrate life as a gift, and that's all. That's what he's getting at. But the human, unquenchable lust for more money, more stuff, more square footage, more this, more that, more possessions, more, a better house, a better life, a better marriage, it's unquenchable. And it absolutely bleeds the soul dry. And I don't know about you, but I want out of the rat race. Paul says, listen, I found the secret. Well, what is the secret? Keep reading. He goes on in 13 to say, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Turns out the secret has a name. Through him who gives me strength. Who is that? Yeah, King Jesus, in the living God, found out in flesh and blood as Jesus of Nazareth in first century Israel. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Now, it's funny, that verse is quoted all the time by followers of Jesus. Most of the time out of context, right? It's not all bad. But in context, Paul is not saying, I can win a football game through Christ who gives me strength. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? And he's not saying, I can start a business and millions of dollars through him who gives me strength, or I can preach a sermon through him. All of that is true, absolutely, right? That's valid. But in context, Paul is saying, I can do what? I can be content. The odds are that's probably harder than winning a football game. Not that this guy would know, right? But in context, he's saying, I can be content right here, right now, in prison, with my hands tied behind my back. I can be content, at peace, happy. Oh, it's enough through him who gives me strength. Now, all of Paul's language in the text is written over against the backdrop of ancient Near Eastern Greek philosophy, in particular, Stoicism, which was a school of philosophy in the ancient Mediterranean. And to the ancient philosophers, the word content, or autarkes in Greek, which can be translated contentment or self-sufficiency, more on that in a minute, and contentment was the ultimate virtue. Here's a few quotes from ancient philosophers. Socrates, also known as Socrates. He is richest who is content with the least. He was asked the question, who's the richest on the planet? And he said, he is richest who is content with the least, for content or contentment is the wealth of nature. Seneca, who was a Stoic philosopher from right around the time of Paul, we think his writing is about 10 years before Philippians. The happy man is content with his present lot, no matter what it is, and is reconciled to his circumstances. All right, it was the ultimate virtue for the philosophers in Paul's world. Now, here's the difference. To the Greek philosophers and to the Stoics, contentment was found in self-sufficiency. Right? It was a reaction to the opulence of the Roman Empire, which was the America of the day, extravagant wealth and ridiculous waste, right? In food and drink and money and stuff and possessions. It was a reaction to the empire. And in essence, the Stoics said, listen, the way you get free from your desire for more money, more stuff, more food, more drink, more sex, more whatever, the way you get free is you detach from desire. You let go of your desire. You say, I am self-sufficient the way I am. I don't need money. I don't need stuff. I am self-sufficient. I'm very similar to Buddhism in that, the Buddha teaches that freedom from suffering is found in detachment from desire. And if you get to that place of detachment from desire, then suffering, in a sense, goes away. Very similar. Now, what Paul does is he picks up the language of Stoicism about contentment, but he turns it on its head, and all of the Philippians would have known all of that, right? He turns it on his head and says, yes, contentment is the ultimate virtue in a sense, but it's not found in self-sufficiency, it's found in God's sufficiency. right? It's not saying, hey, I have enough. I don't need money. I don't because I am enough. I have self-sufficiency. No, it's in dependency on the living God. Stoicism, in the ancient world, Buddhism in the modern world, and not only Buddhism, but in a sense, hipster culture, you know what I mean? Seriously, my generation's culture, which in essence says, let go of your desire for a job or a career or vocation and move into an apartment with 20 guys and don't get married and let go of your desires, right? And just eat and drink and smoke pot all the time, right? Thank you for my generation, God. Thank you, right? In essence, is saying the exact same thing. Let go of your desires. But Paul is saying, no, the opposite is true. Don't let go of your desires. God created you with desires. But put your desires in Jesus and in the gospel and in the kingdom of God. Take all of your drive and ambition and craving for more and your work ethic. Take all of that and funnel that and put that into Jesus, because he is where contentment is found. In fact, that phrase, through him who gives me strength, the word through is a preposition in Greek, and it can be translated through or in, meaning contentment is found in a living symbiotic relationship with the King of the universe. He is where contentment is found because he is enough. You don't need a promotion to be content. You don't need more money. You don't need more stuff. You don't need to get a spouse or a fiance or a girlfriend or a date, right? Nothing wrong with any of that. But it's a carrot on a string. He's enough. Do you believe that? I don't most of the time. Do you believe he is enough? That you can be content right here, right now. Not in 6 months, not in 6 years, not when you graduate, not when you get married, not when you get a house. No, right here, right now, because he is enough. And Paul's life is all about Jesus and all about the gospel of Jesus. Notice the language. I love Paul says, I'm having a great celebration in who? In the Lord. Not in the money you brought, not in the food you brought, not in the drink you brought. Because at last you renewed your concern for me, not because of the money, but because at last you renewed, because now you're about the gospel of Philippians. Paul's rejoicing in the Lord and the gospel. He's working his tail off for the gospel. That's why he says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Why? Because he's tired, working his tail. His life is all about Jesus and all about the gospel of Jesus. And if and when you and I get to that place where we are all about Jesus and we are all about the work of Jesus, and your mind is obsessed, not with this and that and the other, but your mind is obsessed and filled up with Jesus, the gospel, the kingdom of God, God's agenda for the cosmos. When you get to that spot, he's enough, and you can be content. Now, to be honest, I feel like an idiot up here teaching on contentment. If you know me, I am probably one of the least content people on the planet, for sure in this church, right? Ask my wife, and if she was here, nodding head right now, right? The way I'm wired, it's in my DNA, right? And on the DISC personality test, I come out as a developer or an entrepreneur, which means my mind is always in the next. Well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do that. Right? In Myers-Briggs, I come out as, quote, everything has room for improvement, right? Or we can make this better, we can make that better, let's do this, boom, 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 right? And it's how I'm hardwired by God in a sense, but what's that saying? Weakness is strength in excess, It's not bad to have drive, not bad to have ambition when it's focused on the kingdom of God, but it ends up unhealthy because I'm always living in the future, right? I'm always living focused on what I do not have rather than living in the moment and the here and now and focused and thanking God and having a great celebration of the Lord for what I do have, starting with Jesus. And my mind is always in the future and never in the moment. And it robs me of joy, robs me of the ability to do what I said last week, to celebrate the goodness of God in all creation. How did you do with that this week? Me? I did lousy. It robs me of the ability to deeply enjoy every moment of existence as an act of worship to the living God. And it's more than that. It's more than a narcissistic, I'm not as happy, right? The root issue for me, and my guess is I'm not alone, is idolatry. It is. The root issue for me is I think life is found in whatever, right? A new car that doesn't leak in the winter. Oh, then I would be happy. Or in this, or in that, or in more money, or more stuff, or in... The root issue for me is I believe the lie. If and when I get X, then I will be content, then I will be happy. And it's misplaced worship. It's worship of the creation rather than the creator. And it's a lie. The truth is I have Jesus, and he is enough. That's why I think worship, what better response right now than worship? To put Jesus front and center in your heart and say, listen, Jesus, you are enough. And the beauty of Jesus is that whatever your circumstances, and we're all over the map, there's 1,000 people right here, and hello to all of you in the video venue, right? Some of you are thriving right now. You're in abundance. You have so much. You're happy. Thank God. Others of you are in living hell right now. We're all over the map. The beauty of Jesus is no matter where you're at, he's enough. In times of want, if you're out of work, if you don't have enough money to pay the bills, if you're not healthy, if your life is broken, if your children are not doing well right now, you can be filled with joy because it's not dependent on your circumstances. It's dependent on Jesus, and you have Jesus. And in times of plenty, if your life is thriving right now and you're happy and you're doing great and your children are growing well, yes, then it's icing on the cake because the secret has a name.